Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for new stories. Ethan Drake, a reclusive astrophysicist and amateur stargazer, stumbles upon an otherworldly artifact while exploring a remote canyon. This artifact connects him to a cosmic entity, who reveals itself as a transcendent god of interstellar life. The deity grants Ethan a peculiar blessing: the companionship of two alien women from a distant planet. The catch: their survival and integration into Earth's ecosystem depend on a unique biological bond, one that only Ethan can provide. Ethan's life is upended as the alien duo arrives, introducing conflict, intrigue, and humor. Ethan meets the aliens: Kilora, a warrior with iridescent skin and unparalleled combat skills, and Linthara, a diplomat with empathic abilities and a knack for technology. Their personalities clash not only with each other but also with Ethan's earthly habits. Struggles abound as they adapt to human customs while Ethan wrestles with the ethical implications of their bond. Meanwhile, strange phenomena hint at larger cosmic consequences of their presence on Earth. Ethan learns that the mating process isn't what he assumed. It's an intricate fusion of biology and energy, requiring mutual trust and synchronization of minds. Kilora and Linthara reveal their planet's plight, making Ethan a reluctant but pivotal figure in their species' survival. As the bonding attempts begin, comedic and tense moments ensue, with Ethan struggling to understand alien biology and social dynamics. Unbeknownst to them, the artifact's activation has drawn the attention of a secretive Earth-based organization and a rival alien faction. Both seek to exploit the artifact's power. Ethan, Kilora, and Linthara find themselves on the run, forced to protect each other despite their differences. Amid the action, their bond deepens, not just biologically but emotionally. The trio confronts the Earth-based organization and discovers its ties to alien interference throughout history. Meanwhile, Kilora and Linthara uncover a horrifying truth: the rival faction pursuing them was responsible for the destruction of their homeworld. Ethan's growing connection to the artifact allows him to tap into its powers, but at a cost. Ethan and the aliens use the artifact to launch a daring counterattack on the rival faction. Ethan's newfound abilities allow him to communicate with the cosmic god, who reveals that humanity itself has a latent role in galactic evolution. The stakes grow as Ethan must decide between risking Earth's exposure to alien forces or safeguarding it at the expense of Kilora and Linthara's survival. In a climactic battle, Ethan fully activates the artifact, merging his consciousness with the alien god's will. He gains a profound understanding of life's interconnectedness. With Kilora and Linthara's help, he neutralizes the rival faction and the Earth-based organization but faces a choice: return the aliens to their homeworld to rebuild or allow them to stay on Earth, forever changing humanity's future. The story ends on a bittersweet yet hopeful note, with Ethan embracing his role in a vast, evolving cosmos. Ethan Drake never expected a routine hike to change his life. The jagged cliffs of Coyote Canyon were his refuge, a place where he could escape the monotony of his job as an underappreciated lab technician. Here, under the starlit sky, he could dream about the universe and its secrets, far removed from humanity's petty dramas. It was on one such stargazing trip that Ethan stumbled upon the artifact. At first glance, it resembled a shard of black glass, its surface swirling with iridescent light. It was buried halfway into the earth, pulsating faintly as though alive. Against his better judgment, Ethan reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, the world shifted. He was no longer in the canyon but in a vast, shimmering void. Stars, nebulas, and galaxies swirled around him, and at the center of it all was a towering figure of light. Its form was fluid, constantly shifting between shapes, colors, and dimensions. Ethan Drake, the entity intoned, its voice resonating in his very bones. "You have been chosen." "Chosen for what?" Ethan croaked, his voice barely a whisper in the cosmic expanse. "To be a bridge between worlds," the entity replied. "Two lives are entrusted to you. They are of a species on the brink of extinction. Only through your union can they endure." Before Ethan could question further, the void collapsed and he was back in the canyon. The artifact was gone, replaced by two glowing orbs of light hovering before him. As he watched, the orbs coalesced into shapes, humanoid yet alien. The first being was tall and muscular, her skin shimmering like molten silver. Her sharp, angular features and piercing, amber eyes exuded an air of ferocity. She carried herself like a warrior, every movement deliberate and precise. The second was shorter and more delicate, her skin a deep shade of blue adorned with bioluminescent patterns. Her violet eyes sparkled with curiosity, and her presence was soothing, almost hypnotic. Ethan blinked, his mind reeling. What are you? The silver-skinned one stepped forward, her voice firm and commanding. I am Kilora, a guardian of the Selithari people. And this is Linthara, our kind's most gifted empath. Why are you here? Ethan asked, his voice tinged with panic. Linthara stepped closer, her tone gentle but urgent. Our world has been destroyed, our species scattered. The cosmic entity you call God has brought us to you. We need your help. Ethan stared at them, his heart pounding. My help? Oh, I'm just a guy who likes astronomy. Kilora's eyes narrowed. You are more than you realize. The artifact chose you. It linked our fates. Before Ethan could process this revelation, a sharp pain shot through his chest. The artifact's energy surged within him, and fragments of alien knowledge flooded his mind. He saw glimpses of their world, their struggles, and their desperate journey through the cosmos. As the pain subsided, Ethan collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Kilora and Linthara knelt beside him, their expressions a mixture of concern and determination. Ethan, Linthara said softly, you are our last hope. Ethan stared blankly at his cluttered living room. A stack of unread science journals leaned precariously next to a collection of coffee-stained mugs. The smell of burnt pizza lingered in the air, a testament to his usual dinner choice. Across from him stood two extraterrestrial beings, Kilora, a warrior with a predatory grace, and Linthara, a diplomat whose bioluminescent patterns glowed faintly as she surveyed her surroundings. The silence was heavy and awkward. Ethan rubbed his temples, his mind racing. The visions from the artifact had provided snippets of their world, but nothing could prepare him for hosting two aliens in his cramped apartment. You live here? Kilora's tone was laced with disdain as she nudged a discarded sock with her foot. Her amber eyes scanned the room as if searching for hidden threats. It's not much, Ethan muttered defensively, but it's home. Linthara, ever the diplomat, stepped forward and placed a hand on his arm. Her touch was cool, sending a calming sensation through his body. We are grateful for your hospitality, Ethan. It is different from what we know, but it is enough. Kilora snorted but said nothing, instead crossing her arms and leaning against the wall. The movement made her presence all the more imposing. Her silvery skin caught the light, shimmering like liquid metal. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right, let's get a few things straight. You're here because some cosmic being decided to throw my life into chaos. You say you need my help, but what does that actually mean? Are you staying here? For how long? And what's this about mating? Kilora straightened, her expression unreadable. Our survival depends on your cooperation. The details will become clear in time. That's not exactly reassuring, Ethan replied, throwing his hands up. What am I supposed to tell my neighbors? That I'm hosting two? He paused, gesturing vaguely at the two women. Aliens? Humans are known for their adaptability, Linthara said gently, her violet eyes meeting his. Surely you can devise a cover story? Before Ethan could respond, Kilora's head snapped toward the window. Her body tensed, and in a single fluid motion, she unsheathed a blade that seemed to materialize from thin air. We're being watched. What? Ethan darted to the window, peering out into the night. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just the quiet suburban street bathed in the glow of streetlights. But then he noticed a dark van parked a little too perfectly across the road. Its tinted windows were a dead giveaway. Great, he muttered. Just what I needed, government spooks. Kilora's grip on her weapon tightened. If they threaten us, they will be eliminated. Whoa. Ethan stepped between her and the door. We don't eliminate people here. At least not in my neighborhood. Linthara touched Kilora's arm, her glow intensifying slightly. Ethan is right. Violence will draw unnecessary attention. Let us assess the situation before taking action. Kilora scowled but sheathed her weapon. Fine. But if they attack, I won't hesitate. Ethan exhaled in relief and grabbed his phone. I'll handle this. Just stay out of sight. As he stepped outside, his mind raced. He knew the van wasn't a coincidence. The artifact, the sudden arrival of Kilora and Linthara, it had all been too conspicuous. Someone must have been monitoring the energy spike from the canyon. He approached the van cautiously, waving his phone as if recording. Hey, I know you're in there. What's the deal? Lost? Selling encyclopedias? The driver's window rolled down slightly, revealing a man in a dark suit and sunglasses. Classic government agent vibes. The man didn't smile. Mr. Drake, we'd like to ask you a few questions. Ethan plastered on a forced grin. Questions? About what? My HOA dues? Because I already told them. About the artifact, the agent interrupted, his voice cold. We know you found it. Ethan's stomach dropped. He forced a laugh. Artifact? You've been watching too many sci-fi movies, buddy? The agent's expression didn't change. We have readings indicating a significant energy disturbance originating from your location. Cooperate and this will go smoothly. Ethan glanced back at his house. Kilora and Linthra were probably watching, ready to intervene. The last thing he needed was for Kilora to come charging out with her blade. I think you've got the wrong guy, Ethan said, backing away. But good luck with your investigation. Hope you find what you're looking for. He didn't wait for a response before turning on his heel and heading back inside. His pulse raced as he locked the door behind him. They know, he said, leaning against the door. Whoever they are, they know about the artifact. Kilora's eyes blazed. Then we should strike first? No? Ethan shouted. We're not going to start a war on my front lawn. Linthra stepped between them, her calm presence diffusing the tension. Ethan is right. We must act carefully. If these humans are aware of the artifact, they may also be aware of its power. Direct confrontation would be unwise. Kilora growled low in her throat but relented. What do you propose? Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. We lay low. Don't give them a reason to escalate. I'll figure out how to throw them off our trail. And if they don't back down? Kilora asked. Ethan hesitated, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Then we'll figure it out. Together. Linthra placed a hand on his shoulder, her glow radiating reassurance. You are braver than you realize, Ethan. I'm not brave, he muttered. I'm just trying to survive. Kilora snorted. Survival requires strength. Perhaps you have more of it than you think. The comment caught him off guard. Was that a compliment? Before he could dwell on it, Kilora turned away, her focus already shifting to potential threats. Linthra, meanwhile, began to explore the room with a childlike curiosity. She picked up a photograph of Ethan and his late father, her expression softening. This is your family? Ethan nodded, his throat tightening. Yeah. Just me now, though. Linthra's empathic glow dimmed slightly, as if in sympathy. You have lost much. Ethan shrugged, trying to brush off the ache in his chest. Haven't we all? Kilora, standing guard by the window, spoke without turning. Loss is a catalyst for growth. Do not dwell on it. Ethan huffed a laugh. Thanks, Yoda. Kilora's brow furrowed. Who is this Yoda? Linthra chuckled softly, the sound surprisingly musical. Perhaps it is a story you can share later. Ethan couldn't help but smile despite the tension. Yeah, later. For now, though, he had more pressing concerns. The presence of Kilora and Linthra had already turned his world upside down. And with the shadowy agents watching his every move, he had a sinking feeling things were about to get a lot worse. The tension in Ethan's house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Kilora stood at the window, her predatory gaze locked on the dark van parked outside. Linthra sat cross-legged on the couch, her glow flickering rhythmically as she meditated. Ethan, meanwhile, paced the room, his mind churning with equal parts panic and frustration. How long are they going to sit there? He muttered, glancing at Kilora. As long as it takes, she replied without looking away. They are predators waiting for an opening. Ethan groaned, running a hand through his hair. Great. Just what I needed, a cold war in my driveway. Linthra opened her eyes, her soft voice cutting through the tension. Perhaps it is time we address the core issue. The artifact's energy has linked us, Ethan. This connection must be solidified, or the imbalance will worsen. Imbalance? Ethan stopped pacing, looking at her with a mix of dread and curiosity. What does that even mean? Kilora turned from the window, her expression stern. The artifact is not merely a relic. It is a conduit of life energy, one designed to bridge species and sustain worlds. When it bonded with you, it tethered us to you as well. Without a proper synchronization, the energy will destabilize. Ethan blinked, feeling as though he'd just been handed a pop quiz on advanced alien physics. And by synchronization, you mean? Linthra's bioluminescence brightened slightly. A bonding ritual. It is a melding of our energies, facilitated through a process unique to each species. For Selethari, it is deeply intimate. Ethan's stomach flipped. Okay, hold on. Are we talking about some kind of cosmic marriage ceremony? Because I didn't sign up for that. Kilora's eyes narrowed. Do not trivialize this. It is a matter of survival, for us and for you. Me? Ethan's voice rose an octave. Why me? Linthra stood and approached him, her presence soothing. Because the artifact chose you. Your physiology is uniquely compatible with ours. Without this bond, the artifact's energy will overwhelm you, consuming you from within. Ethan swallowed hard, his pulse quickening. So, what happens if we do this bonding thing? Kilora stepped closer, her imposing figure making Ethan instinctively take a step back. If the ritual succeeds, our connection will stabilize. You will gain insight into our abilities and we will adapt fully to your world. And if it fails? Ethan asked, dreading the answer. Kilora's silence was answer enough. Linthra placed a gentle hand on his arm. The risk is minimal, Ethan. We will guide you through it. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. All right. Fine. Let's say I'm on board. What does this ritual involve? Do we need candles or a priest or something? Linthra smiled faintly. No priest is required, but the setting must be attuned to natural energy flows. A place of peace and harmony. Kilora nodded. Somewhere isolated. The wilderness, perhaps. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You mean outside? With those guys watching? He jerked a thumb toward the window. Linthra's expression grew thoughtful. A distraction may be necessary. Kilora grinned, her sharp teeth glinting. Leave that to me. Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but Kilora was already moving. She grabbed a metallic sphere from her belt and pressed a series of buttons. The device emitted a high-pitched hum before she tossed it out the window. Wait, what is that? Ethan asked, panic creeping into his voice. Kilora smirked. A decoy. It will emit false energy readings and lead them on a chase. The sphere rolled into the street, its surface shimmering. Within seconds, the van's engine roared to life, and the vehicle sped off in pursuit of the decoy. Ethan stared after it, equal parts impressed and horrified. You could have warned me. There was no time, Kilora replied curtly. Now let us prepare. An hour later, the trio stood in a secluded forest clearing. The moon cast a silvery glow over the scene, and the air hummed with the sounds of nocturnal life. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, feeling out of place amid the surreal surroundings. So, what now? He asked, his voice cutting through the stillness. Linthra stepped forward, her bioluminescence intensifying. She raised her hands and tendrils of light flowed from her fingertips, weaving intricate patterns in the air. The patterns formed a glowing circle on the ground, pulsating gently. This is the nexus, she explained. A focal point for our energies. Stand at the center. Ethan hesitated, glancing at Kilora. She gave a curt nod, her expression uncharacteristically serious. Reluctantly, he stepped into the circle, the light enveloping him in a warm, tingling sensation. Kilora and Linthra joined him, standing on either side. Linthra closed her eyes, her glow synchronizing with the circle's pulse. Kilora extended her hands toward Ethan, her gaze piercing. Focus, she commanded. Clear your mind. Let the energy flow through you. Ethan closed his eyes, trying to calm his racing thoughts. The warmth around him grew stronger, as if the light itself was alive, coursing through his veins. He felt a strange connection to the women beside him, a shared rhythm, a blending of their very essences. Images flooded his mind, Kilora training in a barren wasteland, her determination unwavering. Linthra standing before a council of shimmering beings, her voice carrying hope and resolve. He saw their struggles, their fears, their unyielding will to survive. The bond deepened and with it came a surge of power. Ethan's senses heightened, his awareness expanding beyond the physical. He felt the forest around him, the life teeming within it. He felt Kilora's fiery strength and Linthra's soothing presence intertwine with his own. But then, a jarring sensation disrupted the harmony. A foreign force, dark and malevolent, clawed at the edges of the bond. Ethan's eyes snapped open, and he saw Kilora and Linthra tense, their faces etched with pain. What's happening? He gasped. The bond is under attack, Linthra said, her voice strained. An outside force, they're trying to sever it? Kilora growled, her hands glowing with a silvery light. They found us. We must fight. Ethan looked around, his heart pounding. Shadows flickered at the edge of the clearing and a low hum filled the air. Figures emerged, clad in sleek black armor and armed with weapons that glowed ominously. Great, Ethan muttered. More uninvited guests. Kilora stepped forward, her blade appearing in her hand. Stay within the circle. We'll protect you. Ethan clenched his fists, the warmth of the bond still pulsing within him. No, he said firmly. We protect each other. Kilora glanced back at him, a flicker of respect in her eyes. Then fight with us. As the armored figures advanced, the trio prepared to defend their bond and their future. The light of the Nexus burned brighter, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears as the armored figures advanced, their weapons casting a cold, eerie glow across the clearing. The nexus of light around him shimmered with intensity, reacting to the rising tension. He glanced at Kilora and Linthra, who stood poised and unyielding. Kilora brandished her blade, its edge shimmering like liquid fire. "Stay behind me, Ethan," she barked, her voice as sharp as her weapon. "I'll deal with them." Linthra, glowing brighter than ever, moved to his other side. "The bond empowers all of us now, Ethan. Feel it? Use it? Use it?" he echoed, panic edging his voice. "I don't even know what it is." Before Linthra could respond, the first attacker lunged. Kilora met the charge head-on, her movements a blur of precision and power. Her blade clashed against a glowing staff, sending sparks flying. The force of the impact echoed through the clearing like a thunderclap. Another figure raised a device that hummed ominously, aiming it at Ethan. Instinctively, he ducked, and a bolt of energy sizzled past, scorching the tree behind him. "Focus, Ethan." Linthra's voice rang out, her glow intensifying as she raised her hands. Pulses of light shot from her fingers, striking two attackers and sending them sprawling. "The bond amplifies your will. Channel it." Ethan took a shaky breath, trying to center himself. He felt the warmth of the bond coursing through him, a deep connection to Kilora and Linthra that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. With a sudden surge of clarity, he extended his hand toward one of the assailants. To his astonishment, a wave of energy rippled outward, knocking the figure off their feet. "I did it," he exclaimed, the rush of power both exhilarating and terrifying. "Don't celebrate yet," Kilora growled, sidestepping a blade swipe and countering with a devastating strike that sent her opponent crumpling. "There are more." And more there were. The armored figures swarmed the clearing, their movements coordinated and relentless. Despite the odds, Kilora fought with unmatched ferocity, her blade a whirlwind of destruction. Linthra moved gracefully, her light weaving defensive barriers that absorbed incoming attacks. Ethan, still grappling with his newfound abilities, focused on staying alive. He ducked, rolled, and lashed out with bursts of energy when he could. Each time, the bond seemed to guide him, sharpening his reflexes and bolstering his courage. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through him, breaking his concentration. He looked down to see a small disc-shaped device latched to his side, glowing ominously. "Ethan?" Linthra cried, her glow flaring as she rushed to his side. "That device is disrupting the bond. Hold still." As Linthra worked to remove the device, Ethan's vision blurred. He felt the connection with Kilora and Linthra weakening, the warmth of the bond fading. Panic gripped him. "Hurry," he gasped. "I can't, hold on." Kilora, seeing Ethan's distress, fought her way to them. Her blade flashed as she cut down another attacker. "Linthra, focus. We can't lose him." "I'm trying," Linthra said, her voice strained. With a final surge of energy, she pried the device free and flung it away, where it exploded in a burst of light. The bond snapped back into place, stronger than ever. Ethan gasped as the warmth flooded through him, bringing a renewed sense of strength. "I'm okay," he said, though his legs still trembled. "Good," Kilora said, turning her attention back to the attackers. "Then let's finish this." The tide of the battle began to turn. Empowered by their bond, the trio fought as a seamless unit. Kilora's raw strength and skill, Linthra's radiant precision, and Ethan's unpredictable bursts of energy overwhelmed the attackers. One by one, the armored figures fell, retreating into the shadows. Finally, the clearing was still, save for the heavy breathing of the trio and the faint hum of the nexus. Ethan slumped to the ground, his energy spent. "Tell me that was the last of them." "For now," Kilora said, scanning the perimeter. Her blade still glowed faintly, ready for another fight. "But they will return. Stronger." Linthra knelt beside Ethan, her glow dimming to a soft, soothing pulse. "You fought well, Ethan. The bond strengthens you more quickly than we anticipated." Ethan let out a weak laugh. "Well, I had great teachers." Kilora smirked, a rare flicker of humor crossing her stern features. "You're not entirely useless." Before Ethan could respond, a faint rumble shook the ground. The nexus of light flickered, its pulse growing erratic. "What's happening now?" Ethan asked, scrambling to his feet. Linthra's eyes widened. "The artifact's energy is destabilizing. The attack must have disrupted its alignment." Kilora stepped closer to the nexus, her expression grim. "We need to secure it before it collapses." Ethan stared at the pulsing circle, dread rising in his chest. "How do we do that?" Linthra extended her hands toward the nexus, her glow intensifying. "We must reinforce the bond. It is the only way to stabilize the energy." Ethan hesitated, the memory of the bonding ritual still fresh. You mean, another ritual? Kilora nodded, stepping into the circle. This time it must be stronger. Complete. There is no room for hesitation. Ethan took a deep breath, his mind racing. Despite the chaos, he felt a deep connection to these two alien beings, a connection he couldn't ignore. All right, he said, stepping into the circle. Let's do this. Linthra smiled softly, her glow radiating warmth. Trust the bond, Ethan. Together we are stronger. As the three of them joined hands, the nexus flared to life, its light enveloping them in a cocoon of energy. Ethan felt the bond deepen, the connection between them solidifying into something unbreakable. Images flooded his mind once again, Kilora's determination, Linthra's compassion, and his own unyielding will to protect. The energy swirled around them, merging their strengths and fears into a single harmonious force. The ground beneath them steadied and the nexus's pulse stabilized. When the light finally faded, the clearing was calm once more. Kilora released his hand, her expression unreadable. The artifact is secure. For now. Linthra stepped back, her glow serene. We are bound, Ethan. What comes next we face together. Ethan nodded, exhaustion and determination warring within him. All right, he said, looking at his unlikely allies. What's next? Kilora's lips curved into a small, fierce smile. Now we prepare for the war that's coming. The forest clearing was still, the soft hum of energy from the nexus fading into silence. Ethan stood at the center of it all, trying to catch his breath as the last echoes of battle disappeared. His muscles ached, his body fatigued, but something else filled him, an unshakable sense of power and connection. The bond between him, Kilora, and Linthra was unlike anything he had ever felt. It was as if they were no longer three separate beings, but one force, bound together by the mysterious artifact. Kilora stood a few steps away, her blade still in hand, scanning the edges of the clearing with a hawk-like intensity. She had returned to her stoic self, the fierce warrior with no time for rest. Linthra, on the other hand, remained by Ethan's side, her calming presence a stark contrast to Kilora's. Is it over? Ethan asked, his voice rough, though he tried to sound more confident than he felt. For now, Kilora replied, her gaze unwavering. But they'll be back. The enemy knows we have the artifact and they will stop at nothing to take it. Linthra placed a hand gently on his shoulder. You have become part of this fight, Ethan. You cannot turn back now. Ethan met her gaze, the weight of her words sinking in. He was in this, completely, irrevocably. There was no escape, no going back to his normal life. But somehow, despite the fear gnawing at him, he didn't want to go back. Not anymore. He nodded, swallowing his apprehension. All right. What do we do next? Linthra's bioluminescence flickered as she stepped forward. We need answers. There is much about the artifact and its origin that remains a mystery. Kilora's expression hardened. I agree. The enemy who attacked us is no random force. They are organized and they are not alone. We must find out who they are and why they seek the artifact. Ethan glanced between the two of them, feeling out of his depth. He was just a regular guy, a scientist sure but not a warrior or a diplomat. Yet here he was, tangled in something far larger than he could have ever imagined. Okay, he said, trying to sound decisive. We find out who they are. But how? Linthra's voice was quiet but firm. We must trace the source of the energy that's been following us. It might lead us to their base of operations. The energy from the artifact? Ethan asked, his brow furrowed. How do we even begin to track that? We have a way, Kilora interjected. But it will require us to move quickly. They've already tried to neutralize us once. We cannot afford to wait. Ethan looked at Kilora, noting the fierce determination in her amber eyes. There was no questioning her commitment to the mission. She had been a warrior her entire life, and now she was trusting him, a civilian with no experience in battle, to help her. It was a heavy burden, but something inside him stirred. He was no longer just a bystander. He steeled himself. Okay, let's move. The three of them made their way through the dense woods, the cool night air brushing against Ethan's skin. As they walked, the bond between them seemed to strengthen, the energy flowing through the air like an invisible current. It wasn't just physical power that surged through him, it was an understanding, a connection to Kilora and Linthra that transcended words. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Kilora led the way, her every step calculated and swift. Linthra followed closely. Behind, her eyes scanning the surroundings with quiet vigilance. Ethan kept his pace steady, though every part of him was on edge. His thoughts kept drifting to the unknown enemy that had attacked them, to the dark figures who had seemed so determined to steal the artifact. Finally, after what felt like hours of walking, they arrived at a secluded outcrop overlooking a vast valley. In the distance, a faint flicker of light caught Ethan's eye, a structure hidden among the trees, glowing with unnatural energy. "There," Kilora said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That is their stronghold." Ethan's heart raced as he followed her gaze. The structure was imposing, built into the side of a mountain. Its jagged, angular shape didn't resemble anything human-made. It exuded an aura of otherworldly technology. As they approached, the hum of energy grew louder, vibrating in the air around them. "Are we going in?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with unease. Kilora nodded, her expression unyielding. "We will infiltrate and find out what we can. We cannot fight them blindly without knowing their true intentions." Linthra's voice cut through the tension. "But we must be careful. They are likely aware of us by now, and any misstep could lead to disaster." Ethan's throat tightened. "So what's the plan?" Kilora grinned, a dangerous gleam in her eyes. "We slip in, find what we need, and get out before they know we were ever here." Ethan wasn't sure if he was reassured by her confidence or terrified by her casual approach. Either way, there was no turning back. As they neared the entrance to the structure, Ethan could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The air seemed thicker here, charged with an electric hum. His senses were heightened, the bond with Kilora and Linthra feeding him a strange, unfamiliar awareness of his surroundings. "Stay close," Kilora whispered, her movements silent as she approached the door. The surface of the structure shimmered, reacting to her presence. She pressed a hand to the stone, and it parted, revealing a narrow passage leading into the darkness. Ethan's heart raced as they stepped inside. The air was cold, metallic, and heavy with the scent of ozone. The walls were lined with pulsating lights, and strange, foreign symbols were etched into the stone. It was as if the very walls of the structure were alive. Linthra's voice was soft but urgent. "This place is ancient. Its energy is unlike anything I've ever felt." "Stay focused," Kilora muttered, her eyes scanning every corner. "We need to find the central core. The artifact's energy is strong here. It must be connected to this place." They moved deeper into the structure, the narrow corridor opening up into a vast, cavernous chamber. In the center, a massive device stood, its core glowing with an eerie, pulsing light. Ethan could feel the energy radiating from it, tugging at the bond they shared. "That's it," Kilora whispered. "The source of the power." Ethan's pulse quickened. "What is it?" Linthra stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the device. "This is no ordinary machine. It is a conduit much like the artifact. But its power is far more concentrated. This is what they're after." Ethan swallowed hard, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. What do they want with it? Why risk everything to steal the artifact? Kilora's expression darkened. To harness its power. To control the energies that bind worlds together. And if they succeed, Linthra finished the thought, it could tear the fabric of the universe apart. Ethan's mind raced as the gravity of their situation sank in. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to protect the very balance of existence. "This has to end," Ethan muttered. "We can't let them get this power." Kilora's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then let's make sure they don't." The trio stood before the glowing device, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The battle was far from over. But with the bond between them now unbreakable, Ethan knew one thing for sure: they were in this fight together. And no matter the cost, they would fight to protect the artifact and the universe itself. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the colossal device before him. Its dark, shimmering surface pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, almost as if it were alive, breathing in sync with the distant hum of the structure. The air felt thick with energy, charged with the weight of something ancient, something powerful. He could feel the bond between himself, Kilora, and Linthra thrumming in the air like an unseen force, amplifying their awareness and heightening every sense. "We're not alone," Kilora murmured, her hand hovering over her weapon, eyes scanning the shadows. "The energy here, it's not just the device. There are others. They've already detected us." Ethan tensed. He could feel it too, a creeping sensation at the edge of his awareness. There were presences moving in the darkness, watching them. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. Linthra stepped closer to him, her bioluminescence flickering softly, a beacon of reassurance in the dark. "Stay calm, Ethan. The bond strengthens us. Together we can face whatever comes." He nodded, trying to steady his breathing. The bond was real and it was growing stronger by the second. But with the power that it gave him came a weight. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was part of this, part of a struggle for the future of the universe itself. Do you know what this device is? Ethan asked, his voice quieter than usual as he glanced at Kilora and Linthra. Kilora's expression darkened, her eyes fixed on the device. It's a convergence core. An ancient weapon, capable of warping the very fabric of reality. The artifact you carry, she added, glancing briefly at the shimmering object still hidden in their pack, was made to keep this device sealed. Ethan felt his stomach twist. So this is the thing they've been after? Linthra nodded, her voice low. The convergence core draws its power from dimensional rifts. It can tear apart entire realities if activated, a tool of destruction created long before our people even came into existence. If the enemy controls it, they could unmake everything we know. A chill ran through Ethan. The thought of so much destruction, of things being unmade, was unfathomable. But Kilora's expression was resolute. We need to stop them from activating it, Kilora said with a firm nod. And we need to destroy this place before they can use it to its full potential. Ethan's pulse quickened. How do we do that? Linthra turned to face him, her eyes glowing softly. We cannot destroy it with brute force alone. The convergence core is linked to the fabric of this place, to the very structure itself. If we're going to shut it down, we'll need to sever the connection. And to do that, we must reach the central control node. Kilora glanced toward the far end of the chamber, where a series of alien symbols blinked and shifted on the walls. There. The control node is at the heart of the structure. If we can disable it, we can sever the core's link to this dimension. Ethan felt the weight of their plan. It was a dangerous gambit, but there was no other choice. He didn't want to think about the consequences if they failed. All right, he said, his voice shaky but determined. Let's go. The journey through the structure's inner corridors was tense. Every footstep echoed in the silent hallways, each turn filled with uncertainty. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air was heavy with the sense of ancient power, and the walls seemed to close in around them, as though the very structure was alive, watching, waiting. As they neared the heart of the structure, a low, ominous hum vibrated through the floor. The lights flickered and buzzed, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Ethan could feel his heart race in time with the rhythmic pulses of energy around him. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, but he pushed the fear down. They had come too far to stop now. We're close, Kilora said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Her hand tightened on the hilt of her blade, ready for whatever might await them. Linthra's eyes flickered with an almost preternatural awareness. The energy is growing unstable. We need to move faster. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a sharp metallic click. Ethan spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his side, where he had carried the energy pulse device that Linthra had given him earlier. But before he could react, the walls around them shimmered, and dark figures materialized from the shadows. They were humanoid, but their features were distorted, their faces obscured by helmets and their bodies encased in shimmering black armor. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, the same light Ethan had seen in the armored attackers earlier. They were not human. They were something else entirely. Kilora. Ethan yelled, instinctively backing toward her, though his legs felt like lead. We've been detected, Kilora said, her tone cold, unfazed by the sudden onslaught. She raised her blade. Get ready. The dark figures didn't waste any time. In an instant they lunged, their weapons drawn, moving with deadly speed. Kilora met the first attacker head-on, her blade flashing through the air with lethal precision. Sparks flew as the enemy's weapon collided with hers. The impact reverberated through the air like a thunderclap, but Kilora stood firm, her stance unwavering. Ethan, his heart racing, pushed forward. The bond surged within him, guiding his every movement. Without thinking, he raised his hand and released a burst of energy, a shockwave of force that sent one of the attackers flying back into the wall with a loud crash. Linthra, standing just beside him, extended her arms, and the air around them shimmered as she conjured a barrier of radiant light. It absorbed the incoming attacks, protecting them from the barrage of laser fire. Her glowing eyes locked with Ethan's. Focus. You're stronger than you think. Ethan nodded, feeling the surge of power that came with her words. He was no longer the helpless civilian who had stumbled into this war. He was part of this, and he had the strength to fight. Together they moved as one, Kilora cutting down enemies with her brutal skill, Linthra providing defensive barriers and counterattacks, and Ethan unleashing his newfound powers with growing confidence. The battle was chaotic, but they fought with a rhythm that only they could achieve, a bond forged through fire. But even as they battled, Ethan could feel the pressure building. The energy from the convergence core was escalating, the hum growing louder with every passing second. "We need to hurry," Ethan shouted, narrowly dodging an incoming strike. Kilora's eyes flashed. "This way. The control node is just ahead." They pushed forward, cutting through the last line of enemies that stood between them and their goal. As they reached the final corridor, the control node loomed ahead, a massive, glowing structure embedded in the wall, covered in alien runes and emitting a pulse of raw, chaotic energy. "This is it," Kilora said, her voice grim. "We must disable it before the core reaches full power." Ethan looked at the control node, feeling its energy pulse through him, almost as if it were calling to him. It was time. Time to make the final stand. "Let's do this," he said, stepping forward, his body humming with the power of the bond. With Kilora and Linthra at his side, he knew they had a chance. The future of the universe was at stake, and he wasn't going to let it slip away. The chamber before them pulsed with a powerful energy that seemed to vibrate in every corner of the room. The control node, glowing with eerie blue light, loomed before them, its surface alive with alien runes. The very air felt electric, charged with the raw power of the convergence core. Ethan could feel the weight of it, the urgency, the gravity of their task. The fate of entire dimensions hung in the balance, and only they had the power to stop it. Kilora stood beside him, her expression grim but resolute. She was the warrior, the tactician, the leader. In her, Ethan saw the unwavering determination that had carried her through battles and wars across galaxies. Linthra, on the other hand, was a quiet strength, her calm presence a steadying force as they prepared to face what lay ahead. She stepped forward now, her fingers brushing the glowing surface of the control node. "This is it," she said softly. "The core's energy is already destabilizing. We must act quickly." Ethan swallowed hard. The weight of their mission pressed down on him, but the bond between them, the connection that had grown stronger over time, filled him with a sense of resolve. He had a part to play in this, a vital role, and he wasn't going to back down now. "We don't have much time," Kilora said, her voice sharp. "We need to disable the node before it can fully activate. If it does, the core will enter a state of critical mass, and it will rip through the fabric of this reality." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. "How do we disable it?" Linthra's glowing eyes focused on the array of symbols and energy pulses emanating from the control node. The node operates on a neural frequency. It's integrated into the very fabric of this structure. If we can disrupt the signal, it will cause the core to collapse in on itself. But the process will be dangerous. The energy will fight back. Kilora's lips curled into a determined grin. "We're ready for whatever comes." Ethan couldn't deny the surge of confidence that came from Kilora's words. In the face of insurmountable odds, she always found a way. And now, with the weight of the universe on their shoulders, the three of them would have to rely on each other more than ever. "All right," Ethan said, taking a deep breath. "What's the plan?" Linthra gestured toward a set of glowing panels near the base of the control node. "We'll need to access these terminals. They will allow us to interrupt the neural signal. But they are heavily guarded, both by the node's defenses and by the residual energy of the core. Then we'll fight our way through," Kilora declared. She gripped her blade tighter, her eyes scanning the room, always prepared for battle. Ethan took a step forward, but Linthra's hand on his shoulder stopped him. "Ethan," Linthra said softly. "You must be careful. The bond between us is strong, but the core's energy will seek to break it. It will try to turn us against each other." He looked at her, the weight of her words settling over him. He had felt it, the strange, tugging sensation of the energy, the way it made him feel as if something was pulling at his mind, seeking to manipulate him. The bond had kept him grounded, but this was different. This was something far more insidious. "I won't let it break us," Ethan said, his voice steady, though his insides twisted with uncertainty. He wasn't sure how much longer he could hold out, but he had to try. "For them. For the universe." Linthra smiled gently. "Stay strong." They moved forward, their steps quiet and calculated. The further they went into the heart of the chamber, the stronger the pull of the convergence core became. The air grew warmer, thicker with static energy, and Ethan could feel the pressure building in his chest, the air around them seeming to warp and shimmer. The node's pulsing light intensified, throwing long, flickering shadows across the walls. Suddenly the ground trembled and a deep, resounding hum echoed through the chamber. The node was awakening. The time had come. "Get ready," Kilora shouted. Without another word, she sprang forward, launching herself at the nearest energy barrier that had appeared around the terminal. Her blade slashed through the air with lightning speed, cutting through the shimmering energy field with precision. Ethan followed, the bond between them guiding his every move, his hand crackling with energy as he fired a bolt of pure force at another barrier, destabilizing it. Linthra moved beside him, her calm eyes focused on the intricate patterns of light that swirled in the air. She raised her arms, her bioluminescent aura flaring as she channeled the energy from the convergence core, using it to weaken the protective shields. With each pulse of energy, the defenses grew weaker. But then the walls themselves seemed to react, a sudden flare of violet light erupting from the heart of the node. A pulse of dark energy shot out, crackling through the air like a whip. Ethan staggered back, feeling the surge of power hit him. His vision blurred, and for a moment he felt a wave of cold despair wash over him, as though the very core of the universe was pulling away from him, pulling at his mind and heart. The bond with Kilora and Linthra flickered for a moment, the strain of the core's energy threatening to tear it apart. "Ethan?" Kilora's voice cut through the haze, sharp and clear. "Don't let it break you. We're with you." With those words, the bond snapped back into place, stronger than before. Ethan's body surged with power, and he felt the presence of Kilora and Linthra as if they were a part of him, guiding him, urging him forward. The moment of weakness had passed, but the enemy wasn't done. More defenders materialized, humanoid figures of pure energy, their forms flickering with lightning. They lunged at Kilora and Linthra, but the warrior and the healer were ready. Kilora's blade clashed with one of the energy beings, sending sparks flying, while Linthra created a barrier of radiant light, blocking another attack. Ethan gritted his teeth and focused. His hand extended toward the control node's terminal, his fingers brushing the panel. The energy around him surged, and for a moment the world seemed to slow. The hum of the node intensified, as if it recognized his presence, as if it were aware of the threat they posed. "I can do this," he muttered, his hand glowing with the energy of the bond. He closed his eyes and channeled everything he had learned, the connection with Kilora, the power of the artifact, the energy that flowed between him and Linthra. The terminal responded, a crackling surge of energy coursing through him. The control node trembled, the alien runes on its surface shifting and warping as the bond between the device and the chamber began to unravel. The pulse of energy from the core began to fade, the light dimming as its influence weakened. "We're almost there," Kilora shouted, her voice filled with urgency. With a final push, Ethan released all his power into the terminal, the explosion of energy forcing the core to collapse in on itself. The room shook violently as the energy began to destabilize. The defenders that had appeared to stop them vanished, their forms dissipating into nothingness as the convergence core's power unraveled. Ethan gasped for breath, his body drenched in sweat. The air in the chamber shifted, the oppressive pressure lifting, and the hum of energy that had filled the room began to fade. The node flickered one last time before falling silent, its light extinguishing completely. "We did it," Linthra whispered, her voice filled with awe. Kilora stood beside her, her expression fierce, but there was a rare moment of relief in her eyes. "We did?" Ethan collapsed to his knees, exhausted but relieved. They had won, the core was neutralized. The enemy would no longer have the power to destroy everything. But as the dust settled and the final echoes of battle faded away, Ethan knew that the war wasn't truly over. There would always be more threats, more battles to face. But now, with Kilora and Linthra by his side, he knew he was ready for whatever came next. They had become something more than allies. They were a force, a bond that could not be broken. And together they would protect the universe from whatever darkness lay ahead. The silence in the chamber was deafening. The hum of the convergence core had faded into nothingness, leaving only the sound of their breath and the distant creaking of the ancient structure as it settled. Ethan sat on the cold floor, his back against the now dormant control node, breathing heavily. His limbs were heavy, his energy drained from the intense battle and the overwhelming power he had channeled to disable the core. Beside him, Kilora was already scanning the room, her sharp eyes taking in every detail, ever watchful. Linthra was closer, kneeling beside him, her warm, steady presence like a balm to his fatigued mind. The soft glow from her skin illuminated the darkened chamber, casting long shadows on the walls. "We did it," Linthra said, her voice gentle, though there was an underlying exhaustion in her tone. Her hand rested lightly on his shoulder, a comforting gesture. Ethan's lips twitched in a tired smile, but the weight of everything that had just happened settled heavily in his chest. They had won, yes, but it had come at a price. They had faced unimaginable power and nearly been overwhelmed by it. Yet they had emerged victorious against all odds. But was it enough? Could they rest now, or was the universe still at risk of further destruction? I'm not sure what comes next, Ethan said, his voice hoarse. He turned his gaze to Keylora, who was now examining the strange alien markings that adorned the walls. Do we go back? What happens now? Keylora's eyes flicked over her shoulder toward him, her expression unreadable. After a long moment, she sheathed her blade and turned fully to face him. We do go back. The rest of our people need to know what happened here. We've disrupted the enemy's plans, but there are still factions out there. And this structure, she gestured at the ancient device behind them, is only a fragment of something far bigger. We can't assume that this is the end. Ethan let out a deep breath, trying to steady the storm of questions and emotions swirling in his chest. He had known deep down that this would not be the final battle. The discovery of the convergence core had only been the beginning. What they had just faced was a single strand in a vast web of danger. But even so, the weight of their success was not to be underestimated. What about the artifact? Ethan asked, his voice betraying the lingering uncertainty. He reached for the strange object they had carried with them through the entirety of their journey. It had been his guide, his tool, the key to understanding the core's secrets. The artifact was powerful but also enigmatic. He could feel its strange energy still humming faintly within it. Linthra's eyes narrowed as she glanced at the object. It still carries immense power. It is part of a larger mechanism, one that even our people barely understand. It's why we've kept it hidden for so long. But for now we have disrupted the core, and that is enough. Enough, Ethan repeated. The words sounded hollow, but in the context of their mission, it was all they could afford. They had no time to rest or fully understand the true magnitude of the artifact's power, or the extent of what they had just prevented. The fact that the universe had been spared, for now, was a small comfort in the wake of all they had experienced. Keylora turned back to face them, her expression softer now, though there was a spark in her eyes. We bought some time. But that's all. The enemy we faced here is not the only one out there. We're just beginning to see the tip of the iceberg. There are others. Stronger, more dangerous forces that will come after us. Do you think they'll follow us? Ethan asked, concern rising in his chest. They had just thwarted one plot, but the enemy had seemed vast, their reach limitless. They will, Keylora confirmed. But not immediately. They'll be searching for us. For this structure. For the artifact. She paused, her eyes flicking to the distant horizon beyond the chamber's walls. But we're not going to give them a chance to regroup. We'll take the fight to them. Ethan blinked, his mind reeling. You mean, hunt them down? Yes, Keylora replied, her voice filled with conviction. We'll hunt them down. We're stronger now, the three of us together. We have the power of the convergence core behind us. And we have the artifact which will give us the edge we need. If we stand together, we can prevent the enemy from ever threatening our worlds again. Linthra smiled faintly, her soft glow lighting up the dim room. The path ahead will be difficult. But we are not alone. We have each other. And that, Ethan, is something no one can take from us. Ethan's heart swelled at her words. The bond that had formed between them, forged in battle, in trust, in shared experience, was undeniable. They had come into this fight as strangers, but now they were a team, united in their cause, ready to face whatever challenges the universe would throw at them. I don't know what the future holds, Ethan said quietly, but I do know this. I'm not alone in this anymore. Keylora gave a grim smile, her gaze fixed on the horizon once more. None of us are. The structure around them seemed to hum with a final, distant resonance, as if the ancient device were acknowledging their victory, or perhaps offering a warning for the future. The stone walls that had once seemed so ominous now appeared quiet, almost peaceful, as if their purpose had been fulfilled. The trio began to move, gathering the supplies they would need for the journey back to their home worlds. Their task was far from over. The next battle awaited them, but there was something different now. A sense of unity, of purpose that had not been there before. The weight of the universe no longer felt so heavy. They had a purpose, a goal. We'll need to contact the others, Keylora said, her voice a mix of urgency and determination. They'll want to know what we've discovered here and how close we were to disaster. Ethan nodded. He could feel the call of the unknown, the pull to continue forward. The world he had once known seemed distant now, altered by the journey he had taken. But one thing was clear. Whatever dangers they had faced, whatever enemies lurked in the dark corners of the universe, they would face them together. He had no doubt about that. The path ahead was uncertain. The shadows of the past were long, and the threat of future battles hung over them. But as they stepped out of the chamber, leaving the ruins of the convergence core behind, Ethan couldn't help but feel that a new dawn was breaking. one that would shape the future of the galaxy and their destinies. And no matter what came next, they would face it together as a family forged in the fires of war, bound by a bond that even the stars themselves could not sever. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.